I am always amazed at the blindness of the disciples in Mark. They just don't get it. They're clueless, they're dense, they're dumb. 3 times Jesus has told them that he's going to be killed and raised. 3 times. That's what it means to be the Messiah. And after each time, Jesus teaches them about discipleship and what it means to be a follower of the Messiah who suffers and dies. The first time, Jesus says, "If any want to become my followers, let them deny themselves and take up their cross and follow me. For those who want to save their life will lose it, and those who lose their life for my sake and for the sake of the gospel will save it." The second time, he says, "Whoever wants to be first must be last of all and servant of all." And then the third time that you just heard, he says, "Whoever wishes to become great among you must be your servant. And whoever wishes to be first among you must be slave of all. For the Son of Man came not to be served, but to serve and to give his life a ransom for many." Talk about blindness. These guys just don't get it. Could Jesus be any more clear? 3 times, 3 different ways. To be a follower of Jesus is to be a servant, and they don't get it. They have their physical sight, but they're clueless to more profound matters. I often kind of think with this passage that the disciples, instead of being named Peter, James, and John, ought to be named Larry, Curly, and Moe. And, Larry's done his eye poke thing to all of them, including himself. They're blind. And then there's blind Bartimaeus. He may not physically see, but he sees. He gets it. And when he hears that Jesus is coming, he calls out to him, twice calling him Son of David, which is a royal title. He knows who Jesus is. And instead of asking Jesus for status like his disciples, he asks for mercy. He says, "Son of David, have mercy on me." So Jesus calls Bartimaeus to come to him. And he asks, "What do you want me to do for you?" And in a prayer-like fashion, Bartimaeus says, "My teacher, let me see again." What a contrast. The disciples who see are blind, and Bartimaeus, who's blind, sees. The disciples, even after hearing Jesus tell them 3 times that following him means being a servant, they don't get it. And blind Bartimaeus, right after regaining his sight, follows Jesus on the way of discipleship. You'd think that Jesus could pick better disciples with a little more sight. Now, Bartimaeus' cry was a prayer for physical sight. But as Mark uses this story in the midst of the whole gospel, his cry is really a prayer for sight to see who Jesus is and to understand what it means to follow him. And even though it's on the lips of Bartimaeus, it's our prayer too, and it's on our lips. My teacher, let me see again. And as much as we lambast these disciples for their blindness and for not getting it, we're not all that different. This past week, for our alternative spring break mission trip, we kind of had a running joke going throughout the week because of a little video that we had watched. And it was, they're already laughing. And whenever we would see something, and we'd often say, "Would you look at that? Would you just look at that? Look at that." Well, I looked at it this past week. And what I saw was a group of students who weren't blind. A group of students who had their eyesight restored, and they saw clearly that following Jesus is about being a servant. So instead of heading to Miami Beach or Gulf Shores or a Caribbean island to soak in the sun and party, They all headed to Maryville, Tennessee to serve and grow in faith. And I came away from that experience deeply touched and impressed by their sight, by their faith, and by their commitment. These students over here aren't the future of the church. They are the church. And the church is in good hands.